Welcome to this short series of tutorials designed to simplify the topic of selections in Photoshop. In this tutorial, we'll cover what selections are and give you some quick examples of when you'll use selections most often. A selection is just a way to isolate part of an image, so any work you do on the image affects just that selected part. One reason to use selections is when you want to change the appearance of part of an image. For example, let's say I want to apply a filter that affects only the flower in this photo. First, I'll select the flower, and I'm going to use a tool called the Quick Selection tool to do this. I'll just click and drag over the flower, and that will automatically select it because it has this high contrast edge. And now I'm going to apply a filter that will affect only the flower. So I'll go up to the Filter menu, I'm going to the Stylize category, and I'll choose Oil Paint. I'm going to leave all the settings here at their defaults. What I want you to see is that this effect is being applied only inside the selection. I'm going to click OK, and all that's left to do is to deselect, and you can deselect by either pressing Command-D on the Mac keyboard or Control-D on the Windows keyboard, or you could go up to the Select menu and choose Deselect there. Now let's look at another reason to make selections. Often, if you have a photograph, you'll want to adjust only part of the photograph, and this is where selections can really help you. Again, I'll use the Quick Selection tool, and I'm just going to click and drag across all of the foreground. And when it's all selected, I'll go to the bottom of the Layers panel, and I'll click the Add Adjustment Layer icon there. And I'm going to choose a simple Brightness Contrast Adjustment Layer. Then in the Properties panel, I'll have the sliders for the Brightness Contrast Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to drag the Brightness slider over to the right. If I go back down to the Layers panel and turn off that new Brightness Contrast Adjustment Layer, keep your eye on the photo, and you'll see that this adjustment is affecting only the foreground and not the sky as well. Let's look at another reason to use selections. Sometimes you may want to delete part of an image, leaving transparent pixels behind which you could put another background. To do that on this image, I'm going to use another selection tool, the Rectangular Marquee tool, which is here in the Tools panel. And I'm doing that because I want to select this rectangular area and delete it from the photo. In the Layers panel, I first have to click the Lock icon because the single layer in this photo is a special locked background layer. And then I'll just press the Delete key or the Backspace key on my keyboard. And I'll deselect by pressing Command-D on Mac or Control-D on Windows. Now, if you like, you can put a different background behind there. To do that, I'm going to go down to the Add New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. I'll hold the Command key, that's the Control key on Windows, and click, and that adds a new layer beneath the photo layer. Let's name this the photo layer. And we'll name this the black layer. And with the black layer selected, I'll go up to the Edit menu, and I'll choose Fill, and I'll choose to fill with black, and click OK. One more reason to make a selection is if you want to copy part of an image so you can use that copy on another photo or on the same one. To do that, make sure that you have the right layer selected, the one with the photo, and then click and drag with one of the selection tools in the image. I'm going to use the Rectangular Marquee to select this brown rectangle in the photo. And then I'm going to copy that by using the keyboard shortcut Command-C on the Mac, that's Control-C on Windows, and then I'll paste a copy that I just selected by using the shortcut Command-V on Mac or Control-V on Windows. In the Layers panel, you can see that that created a brand new layer, and if I turn off all the other layers, you'll see that that new layer contains just the copied rectangle. Now, at first you don't see it in the image because it's right on top of the original rectangle that I copied, but if I get the Move tool, and then I click on top of the rectangle and drag, you can see the copy moving with me. And I'll use it to cover up one of the checkers right there. So that should give you an idea not only of what selections are, but when and why you're likely to use them as you work in Photoshop, whether you are changing the appearance of part of an image, or adjusting part of a photo, or deleting or copying part of an image. Let's take a look at some basic selection tools, some of the Marquee tools and Lasso tools, and put them to use to change the decor in this scene. We'll cover several different selection methods in this video, so remember that you can pause and re-watch parts of the video if you need to. The Rectangular Marquee tool is used to select rectangular and square selections. We'll use it to select this photo and change its color to match the other photos. Click in a corner of this photo and start dragging to make a rectangular selection. To constrain the selection to a square, hold down the Shift key too, and continue to drag. Release your finger from the mouse and then from the Shift key. If you need to move the selection, you can click and drag from inside the selection or use the arrow keys on your keyboard. Now let's make a change to this selected area. Go to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the new Fill or Adjustment Layer icon and choose Solid Color. That opens the color picker, and when it's open, you can go anywhere in the image and click to sample a color. You'll see that this created a new color fill layer in the Layers panel. To make the solid blue into a tint, with the Color Fill Adjustment layer selected, go to the Blend Mode menu at the top of the Layers panel and select Color. Now let's use another tool to select this round wood sculpture. In the Tools panel, click the Rectangular Marquee tool and choose the Elliptical Marquee tool from the Flyout menu. This tool is used to make oval or circular selections. Click on any edge of this round object and start to drag, creating an oval selection. Now keep your finger held down on the mouse or trackpad and press the space bar at the same time and push the selection back to the edge of the object. Still keeping your finger held down on the mouse, release the space bar and continue to drag out your selection and shape it so that it matches the underlying object. You may need to do this a few times, all without releasing your finger from the mouse. And if you want a perfectly circular selection, you can also try holding down the Shift key during this process. Now let's make use of this selection. Go to the new Fill or Adjustment Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel again, and this time choose Vibrance. Then in the Properties panel, drag the Vibrance slider over to the right to subtly increase the vividness of the color in the round sculpture. Now let's take a look at a couple of the Lasso tools. Over in the Tools panel, select the Lasso tool. This is a free-form drawing tool. So I'm going to come into the image and I'm just going to quickly drag inside of the edge of this gold sculpture. I'm not being too careful about where I'm dragging because all I want to do is brighten up the inside of that sculpture. So with that selection active, I'll go down to the bottom of the Layers panel, and from the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer icon, this time I'll choose Brightness Contrast. And I'll drag the brightness slider over to the right, and that will just brighten up the inside of that sculpture. Another lasso tool that comes in handy is the Polygonal Lasso. To access that, hold down the Lasso tool and choose the Polygonal Lasso tool from the Flyout menu. This tool is used to make straight-edged selections, like the star on the bookshelf. To use this tool, I'll click to add the first point, and then I'll release my finger from the mouse, and you can see that it starts to create this thread. With my finger still off the mouse, I'll go to the next corner, and I'll click to attach the thread there, and then I'll continue around the star doing the same thing, just clicking each point where I want to attach the Polygonal Lasso. When I get back to the beginning, there's a small circle, and if I click there, that will close the selection. By the way, if you don't make it all the way back to the beginning of the selection, try pressing the Escape key to release the Polygonal Lasso and start again. With that selection active, let's change the color of the star. As before, I'll go down to the Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer icon, and I'll choose Solid Color, and I'll sample a blue color from the image. I'll click OK, and I'll change the new color fill layer to the color blend mode. You also could reduce the opacity of that layer by dragging the opacity slider over to the left, and that will make the tint less strong. And here's a bonus tip. Because we used fill layers and adjustment layers to make changes to these selected areas, our original photo remains intact, and we can come back in and re-edit any of these changes at any time. So that's an introduction to using some of the marquee tools and lasso tools to make simple selections in Photoshop.